I will just start now. So, okay, so what I wanted to do this session is to go through the 4 seals again, and so that you really learn them. And I think Rinpoche wants us to memorize them, and they are very short. And then you don't have to be confused about certain things if you learn them very precisely. So I will just share with you the Tibetan, what they actually look like, and then you will understand the logic and why Rinpoche is so precise with this. So I will share my screen, and I have made this little thing. I hope you can see it. Yeah. Okay. So here we get the 4 seals. So you will see different translations of this. So the first line is all conditioned things are impermanent. It doesn't say phenomena, for instance. It says all conditioned things are impermanent. Then it says all contaminated things are suffering. All phenomena are empty and selfless. Nirvana is peace. So if we look at the first sentence, we can look at the Tibetan, what this is, all conditioned. So this is actually, if you translate it directly, kun is all. No, we're not here, sorry. We are here, 4 seals. Duche, which just means compounded. So in Tibetan, you don't actually have to say thing. That's implicit in the word. Che, duche. Sorry? Yeah. Oh, I hear someone. So
I'm sorry.
Okay, that's okay. So duche means already compounded. So the sentence reads, compounded, all impermanent. That's all that is said in Tibetan. But of course, when we translate it, it has to flow in English. So we say all compounded. You could also say all that is compounded to avoid the word thing, to avoid to add anything. So you could say all that is compounded, or you could say all compounded is impermanent. Yeah. The next sentence just said, sakche tamche dungal. It just said contaminated all suffering. All contaminated is suffering. All that is contaminated in suffering is suffering, or you could say all contaminated things are suffering. The third sentence says phenomena all empty and dakmepa and selfless. Sorry, che nam tong shing dakmepa. So we have to have both. If we're going to be true to the Tibetan, we can't say that all things are empty. We have to say empty and selfless, because that's actually what it says. And here it says phenomena. In the sentences before, it doesn't say phenomena. It just says all that is compounded and all that is contaminated. It doesn't say phenomena, because we have phenomena that are not compounded and not contaminated. So here it says phenomena all empty and selfless, or all phenomena are empty and selfless. Last sentence just says Nyangin le depa shiva. Nyangin is suffering, le depa is beyond. So we translate this as nirvana, or we can say beyond suffering, peace. That which is beyond suffering, or we can say nirvana, is peace. So that's all it says. It's very terse, it's very short and brief, and it's a logic to it. Like Rinpoche said, conditioned things are either contaminated or not contaminated. So we can have conditioned things that are leading to suffering, or that are not leading to suffering. So what is a conditioned thing that is not leading to suffering, do you think? Condition means that it's produced by causes and conditions. So what could be a conditioned thing that does not lead to suffering? Anyone?
Awareness.
Huh? Sorry?
Yeah, bringing awareness to what is.
Oh, there you are. Actually, yeah, Rinpoche said that when like the paths, the three last paths, the path of seeing, the path of habituation, and what he said, the path of no more learning, they are also things that are produced of causes and conditions, right? But they are leading you out of samsara. I think he meant these three paths. He said the last three paths. So they are also they are also compounded, but they are not leading to suffering. They are not contaminated, meaning they are not producing more afflictive emotions, right? So that which is contaminated is that which is leading you into more suffering. Contaminated, it has to do with, and we saw that in some of the translations, it doesn't say contaminated, it says all emotions are suffering, right? But it's not right, according to the Tibetan, to translate this to emotions. We have to know, we have to study the four seals to know that when it says contaminated, it means that which leads to suffering. It means that which is produced by afflictive emotions. That is what is contaminated. Not necessarily all emotions. You could have if you call, well, that's not an afflictive emotion, but you could have an emotion of, you could have love or compassion, and that would not be contaminated. And then the third sentence, here is right to say phenomena, because it's actually in the Tibetan itself. All phenomena are empty and selfless. Tong Shin Dak Mepa. Dak is self, Mepa is a negation, so it's selfless. So we have to have both. We can't just say all phenomena are empty or all phenomena are without self. We have to have both. And what about all phenomena? Are all phenomena are they contaminated or compounded? Are they negative or positive? Are they leading to are all phenomena leading to suffering or not?
Yeah, they're compounded, and then it depends. Yeah.
I should ask, are all phenomena, okay, so here it says all phenomena are empty and selfless, but are phenomena also, are they also compounded then?
Yes, whatever appears has a cause.
So all phenomena, they are ultimately they are empty. They don't have any inherent existence, and they don't have any self. Yeah, but we could say within phenomena, they are selfless and they are empty. We also find nirvana is also one phenomena, right? It's also selfless and empty. So we don't need to take this in a negative way. So Nyangin Ledepa Shiva just says that which is beyond suffering or nirvana is peace. There is actually no is here, but in the classical languages, you don't necessarily have to have an is. It's kind of implicit in the words. Same in Sanskrit. So yeah, I will continue with this document and create this vocabulary. I just thought it was nice for you to see that what the Tibetan really say, and see why Rinpoche is particular about translating it, and why some translations are maybe a little bit far from the real meaning. But you see, this is also very short. It's also very short to learn this, and you have a lot of knowledge within this. Like, conditioned things are impermanent, but that is not to say that all conditioned things are necessarily contaminated. Phenomena are empty and selfless, and within phenomena is also liberation, is also a phenomenon. And nirvana is peace. So that is that. And then we were talking about okay. So then we were talking about emptiness, and what well, let's talk about selflessness first. So then we have two kind of self-grasping. First, when we know what selflessness is, it's the absence of self-grasping. So we can have two kinds of self-grasping. This is also very convenient to know. So the first one is called kun tak in Tibetan. So kun means all, tak means to hang, like you hang something on a nail or something, or you attach something, like you could say ming tak, that you attach a name to something. So it means to apply something, kun tak. So it's a good translation to say that it's imputed, because you apply something to where it is not, right? So so we have a kind of self-grasping that is not naturally there, but it's an intellectual, we could say. It comes from a philosophical system. Like, maybe you don't have a specific idea of a self, but then you read about it, that from one kind of religious perspective, you learn about this greater self, like a god or a creator, or something that you are part of, that you are you have an Atman that is part of Brahman, or you have Jesus in you, or something like that from one religion. So it's something you study, and then you apply that, and you get this idea, kind of imputed idea of a self. And Rinpoche also he also explained that it could be also that, you know, sometimes the Buddha would explain something to his disciples, and they might, from this, they might even impute something onto what he explained, like they might have an idea of a self, so they might perhaps understand his teaching in a different way. So it's not always that it comes from the teaching itself, but it's something that we can impute. And then we have the other.
Sorry, may I ask something?
Yes.
Is this synonymous with labeling? So you label something and then it seems to exist?
Yeah, but kuntak can mean more than labeling. But you can say that, you can say that kuntak has a wider meaning than labeling, but you can also say that labeling is part of kuntak. But that's
so to give something an existence.
Yeah.
What to say?
Yeah, to apply something to that is not necessary, that is not already there. So yeah, so this word is, it comes up quite a lot in Buddhist philosophy, that something is like kuntak. The other one is Lengkye. So Len means together, Lenchik means together, and Kye means to arise or give birth. So it means that something arises together with something else, and innate is quite a good translation of that. Another one that is a much more difficult word is concomitance, which is exactly that, meaning that when one thing arises, something automatically arises together with it, right? So like when you have fire, you have smoke, or you have heat, this will always arise together. When it comes to the self, the innate self arising, we could think of this as one way to think about this Lentya, this innate self-grasping, is that it arises with our experience. Every time we experience something, we automatically attach a self to that. Oh, I am experiencing this. So most of the time we do that. So it might be also like neuroscientists say these days, that it's an innate part of our cognitive process, that we, even if we can't find it when we really analyze the self, we automatically do it. It seems to go with our perception, that we perceive together with this, with a self. So this is more of we could say it's a cognitive thing. It's deeper than the kontakt and the imputation that we can learn, or that we have from our culture or religion or something. This is something that has to do with our cognitive process. Let's see. Yeah. So yeah, like Rinpoche mentioned, this first one, the all imputed, we can learn this through Christian, Hindu, Islam, religion, and it quite often comes with some claims that this is a permanent figure, this is a creator, this is a fully conscious self, or it's a non-conscious self, like in Samkhya, you just have Prakriti or Purusha, and that it's beyond words or concepts. However, when we look into it, we can quite often see that these claims can be self-contradictory, right? That we have an Almighty God, but still the Almighty God, he doesn't actually seem to do anything, or not able to take away people's suffering. It's a God that is, or it is a God that is said to be permanent. But even if the God is permanent, he also interacts or in people's lives, which is not compatible with being permanent. So when we look at this, we can it's quite easy to come to the conclusion that, well, I don't have an imputed self-grasping. This is kind of easy to overcome with analysis. The innate that comes naturally arises with our experience, with the 5 skandhas. So here Rinpoche mentioned that we can have 4 or 5 skandhas, right? So what are the skandhas? They are form, feeling, perception, samskaras or habitual tendencies, and consciousness. So we who are in this desire realm that we live in, the world as human beings, we have all these 5 skandhas, right? We have a form, and we observe forms outside ourselves. We have a feeling, we are in contact with sense objects, and we have the feelings of pleasure, pain, or neutral sensations. We have perception, we have a cognitive process that handles our sense impressions. We have samskaras, or we have habitual, deeply ingrained habitual tendencies, or karma, we could say, or karmic seeds, habitual tendencies. And we have consciousness. We have eye, ear, smell, tongue, mind consciousness, and tactile consciousness. So we have all this. However, if we were in a state of very high dhyana meditations, that if we were then in the formless realm, we wouldn't have the skandha of form. We would still have traces or subtle parts of the other skandhas. So so it seems that this innate self-grasping arises with the 5 skandhas. So it's like part of our being. Okay, innate self-grasping. So this is more difficult to understand, and it's more difficult actually to refute also intellectually. People, like Rinpoche mentioned, people feel quite scared if we say that, oh, there is no like permanent self within you, within your skandhas. You are this 5 parts, but there is actually no self anywhere within them or outside them. There are just these 5 things. And so part of what is hindering us here is this anxiety to let go of this imputed self, even if we when we look, where is the self? Is it in my physical form? Is it attached to my body, or is it in my feelings? Well, they change all the time. Is it in my habitual tendencies? Well, my personality, so to say, they might also change over time. And whatever we sense, what we experience in the world, it changes all the time. But still we have this innate self-grasping. So this is also partly why, one reason the Buddha posited these 5 skandhas, and this is what we practice and we meditate, so that it's a systematic method to see that we can't find a self anywhere within these parts of ourselves. So then we have this big question. So I will do one more thing. Before I discuss that. So we have 2 kinds of basic components. We also talked about that in connection with the 7 points that differentiate the Hinayana from the Mahayana and the other schools. So this is the idea of emptiness. And what the Hinayana holds to is that there are what we call indivisible particles and indivisible moments of consciousness. And here is also the words for those, so we can again look at what the concept is. So dultren means a particle, and cha me means, cha can mean a pair or a side or an aspect. It means that the particle is without parts, so a partless particle, that it is without sides or aspects. So an indivisible particle is a quite good translation. And we can see that the indivisible moment also has this cha me. So it says kechik chama. So kechik means a moment, and chama, so it's a indivisible moment of consciousness. So this describes the 2 basic kinds of component that makes up the world. So it has to be the apprehended, what we are sensing, what we are apprehending with our minds and senses, and what is apprehending it is our consciousness. Yeah. So both this has to have some basis according to the Hinayana of the smallest indivisible particles and the shortest indivisible moments. Okay, and then I wanted to again just to ignore this. This was for yesterday. How the Hinayana. Well, we can look through it again. Actually, how the Hinayana explains.
May I ask a question concerning the previous one?
Yeah.
Those 7 points. This is one of them, yeah.
Which 7 points? Oh, yeah.
I mean, this indivisible particles and moments, this is one of those 7 points.
Yeah.
Is it like this, that Chitta Matra and Hinayana are in all points equal?
No.
Is it,
not at all.
It's only the arhatship and this, the indivisible moments and particles, these 2 points.
I don't know if we will go completely into each of the Hinayana schools. But they differ slightly with regards to the indivisible particles. Whereas and I don't know, I mean, I can say it, but I don't know if Rinpoche wants to go so into it and explain it in detail. But Vaibhashika holds to this idea of the indivisible particles and divisible moments as really existing. So their idea of what is emptiness empty of? It's empty of wholes, the whole things, right? So again, if we look at a table, we perceive a table, but it's actually not a table there. This is what is imputed by us, but what is really there still are these indivisible particles and indivisible moments of consciousness that apprehends a table. So we perceive something that is not there. Because when we mentally dissect it, like it says here, things when destroyed or mentally dissected, if we take the table apart and say, well, what is the table? Is it the plate on top? Is it the legs? Is it the size? Is it the wood? Then we see that, well, there is actually no table there. And what we are left with still cannot be identified with by the mind. So if we break it apart mentally or physically into these indivisible particles, that is not something that our mind can apprehend. Right? We can apprehend wholes such as pots of water, such as pots or water. So the wholes are relative. But the particles are ultimately existent. So that's what the Vaibhashika says. When it comes to the Chittamatra, their explanation is slightly different because Sautrantrika. So sorry, Sautrantrika becomes for Chittamatra. It's slightly different. So they say that we don't know about, well, these particles, they actually perform a function. They do something that that makes us perceive something. They are still external, but they can perform a function so that a picture appears in our consciousness of a table. When it comes to Chittamatra, which could be translated as mind only, they have a different explanation again. They negate that we can't say anything about the external world, which whether it is really there, anything there outside our minds that we apprehend. All we know is that we have these tendencies, we have these habitual tendencies, these karmic seeds that are stored in our alaya vijnana, our storehouse consciousness, and they causes us to experience things. So it's slightly different.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. But here we see, this is from Chandrakirti. This is actually an old simile where they are using a chariot to explain how the self does not exist. And I think they do it as a kind of kick to the Brahmins. I don't know if any one of you have read I think this is it's in one of the Upanishads where they explain the self as a chariot, that the senses are the horses, and the intellect are the reins, and the I can't remember all of it, but they have this idea that the mind is the passenger, and the higher self, or the self, is the charioteer. So they explain the self they assert a self, that there is indeed something, there is a self that is kind of governing all these parts, the senses and the intellect and so on. Whereas when the Buddhist, they uses the same kind of chariot to explain the self, they pick the chariot completely apart. There's nothing to be found anywhere. A chariot is not asserted to be other than its parts. So is a chariot the wheel, or the seat, or the reins, or the spokes of the wheels? Is it the wood that it's made of? Is that the chariot? Well, we can't really say that a chariot and a wheel, or if we smash the chariot apart, is no longer a chariot, and neither is it its part. But can we then say that the chariot is something other than its part? Is there some chariot essence, for instance, that some Indian schools might assert, that things have a certain essence that we might recognize? So a chariot is not its part. It's not, we can't say that it's something other than its part. And does the chariot, is it the case that the chariot possesses the part? Is there like an owner to our experience? Is it hidden somewhere in the parts, or are the parts kind of in the chariot? It is not the mere collection of the parts, nor is it their shape. So the self and the aggregates are similar. So this is from Chandrakirtis. Here's the supplement to Nagarjuna. So I just put this up because Rinpoche mentioned that we have many of these explanations of the absence of the self. You could also read the Bodhicharya. I will stop the sharing. Yeah, you could also read the Bodhicharya Avatara 9th chapter. It has a lot of statements about the self and the absence of the self. And it makes sense to know, if you know what these Indian schools, what they assert, why the Buddhists do what they do, why they are so occupied with this refutation of the self, because there are schools that really assert the self. Okay. So then, what does empty mean according to the Hinayana and Chitta Mantra? Here comes the $1 million question of the day. If it is so that they accept that there are indivisible particles and indivisible moments of consciousness, are they then negating the third seal, that all phenomena are empty and selfless? This was the big question of the day, yeah? Because when we talk about these seals, they are really from early Buddhism. This is like one of the foundational doctrines of Buddhism that is generally thought to be accepted by all Buddhist schools. And moreover, Rinpoche called it a seal, and then we should think about the seal like a stamp. So if you have this stamp on your forehead, if you accept the 4 seals, you have the stamp on your forehead and it says Buddhist. Right, so it's a seal in that way. It seals your identity as a Buddhist, that you accept these things. So what can we say? Well, it's hard to really say it. Like many of us tried. If we don't compare it with what the Mahayana, what the higher schools say, right? So it's clear that that the Chittamatra and the Vaibhashika schools, they are indeed Buddhists. They are sometimes termed the lower schools, so we could say the early Buddhism, or sometimes the northern schools. But they still accept. They are still accepting these 4 seals. So then Rinpoche left us with kind of this as a cliffhanger at lunch break, and then he came back to explain it. How is it that that the Hinayana is in accordance with the 3rd seal, which says that all phenomena are empty and selfless. And I will try to recap what Rinpoche said, because he said that when the Buddha taught the 4 noble truths, he taught that all conditioned things has the 3 marks, or the 3 marks. It's sometimes called the 3 marks of existence, that they are impermanent, suffering, and selfless. And this aspect of selfless is what we practice in meditation. And also the Hinayana practitioner, they do a lot of practice and investigation into this selflessness. Like that's how you do all this meditation on the different aggregates, the 4 applications of mindfulness to the body, sensation, mind, and phenomena. So you do all these practices into the aggregates to investigate this self. Alina, are you gonna ask me another impossible question?
Clarify, because I understood there are 4 characteristics, but you mentioned now 3. So
yes,
4 be empty and self.
Yeah, I looked it up. So Rinpoche added selfless and empty. I thought he was talking about the 3 marks of existence, really. So I'm not sure, because they are definitely impermanence, suffering, and selfless. So whether you add empty to selfless, I guess it's not a big difference. But I think that is, if we're talking about these characters of conditioned things, this is the 3. I assume that is what he was talking about.
Yeah, that's interesting, because if it has not been mentioned, like empty has not been mentioned as a characteristic, only selflessness has been mentioned, then it might make sense to come up later with the concept of emptiness.
Sometimes they add things. Sometimes they add things to these lists over time. Like I also read briefly yesterday that even the 4 seals, when the part with nirvana was not there at first. I just read this in I don't know if it was Ricky or Wikipedia or some. I don't take everything. I don't think take everything to be correct, but it might be that often these lists, they change a bit over time. Anyway, it's not that much of a difference it might be that emptiness is added later, because in the early Buddhism they are more occupied with this selflessness, the absence of self. That is their kind of big refutation, is the absence of this soul that the Buddha said is not compatible with the liberation. If you're hanging on to any kind of idea of a self, it's not compatible with the liberation, which other schools asserted that, you know, you have to look for your soul, your inner Purusha or something, and then you'll be liberated.
Maybe, can you say these 4 seals, where is this source? Like, when was this introduced? Because maybe then later, when emptiness was
I had it, let me
mentioned.
see, the 3, where the 4 seals were in, or the 3 marks of existence.
Like since when are the 4 seals, the stamp and the seal for followers?
Okay.
That's the question.
Mm-hmm.
Because I wonder, since the 3rd seal says all phenomena are empty and selfless,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, they differentiate between emptiness and selflessness.
Okay, I usually go to, when I look at something, I usually go to Rigpa Wiki. The 4 seals, hallmarks of the Buddha's teaching. Significance, these are said to be the hallmark of the Buddha's teaching, and it's often said that the mark of a real Buddhist is that he or she accepts these. And let's see, sources. An early version of the 4 seals is to be found in the Pali Canon, in the form of the 3 marks or seals of existence. Okay, so maybe these are derived from each other. Let me see what the 3 seals or marks of existence. So when it's in the Pali Canon, that's really one of the earliest. That's the earliest layer of Buddhist teachings that we have. So the 3 marks of existence is impermanence, suffering, selflessness. So these are found in the Pali Canon.
Thank you.
So they are probably connected then, that they are fleshed a little bit more out in the 4 seals. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, yes, this was the Rinpoche's explanation. So if we practice, you practice this selflessness, and then you can, you can investigate first intellectually that you are devoid of this imputed self that's come from culture or religion. However, innate self-grasping is just naturally something that arises with the skandhas of the body. And here we find, this I already explained. We find many kind of ways or methods or arguments that you could go through, like these 7 points from Chandrakirti with the chariot, and you also find many of them in Shantideva's 9th chapter of the Bodhisattva Charya Avatara. So you look into the skandhas and see that you cannot find any self there, and that you are neither the owner of your experiences or the experiencer. So the Hinayana, Rinpoche says, explains that all phenomena are empty because they are devoid of an imputed self or an innate self. Right. And then Rinpoche explained further that the problem with this self, whether imputed or innate self, is really that when you have an idea of a self and I, from that comes also mine, daktang dai. He says, I and mine is the root of all the negative emotions. And he also mentioned that in Vajrayana, we do it quite differently, right? Whereas in the Hinayana, we might sit and investigate the different skandhas of the body, like we do in deep meditation. Whereas in Vajrayana, we're using the generation and completion state, right? We visualize. We use we train our imagination, our visualization, to generate these alternative selves. So we get a much more, like one of my teachers, Ian Baker, says, we get a much more fluid sense of self. It's not tied to this body or my skandhas. I could have 8 arms, I could have 6 arms. We get this really, we train our capacity for a much more fluid sense of self that we can change at will. We can merge with the deity. We can do different things with this skillful means. So it's a completely different approach to handling, to work with selflessness. Yeah. So then Rinpoche said that it's accepted. So this is accepted as a valid emptiness. And it's called also, if you overcome this sense of I and mine, this is the door to nirvana, as Rinpoche mentioned, because having that is enough to abandon. Then you abandon, if you abandon the innate and imputed self-grasping, this is indeed enough to overcome the negativities. So all negativities, you can think about it, how they arise from this sense of mine. As long as you have the sense of I, there's a sense of you, there is me, there is mine. And from that, all the negative emotions arises. And that's, I think, was why the Buddha says that the sense of self, however subtle you think it is not compatible with overcoming suffering. Because as long as you are separate from everything else, there will be these negative emotions arising. And he also mentioned that Tsongkhapa, Tsongkhapa says that he says that even an Hinayana Arhat has the same realization of emptiness as a Mahayana practitioner, and that the difference is just in the practice. And his argument for that is that unless their realization was enough, they wouldn't be able to attain arhatship. It's enough to get them out of samsara. Yeah. So this is Tsongkhapa's view, that that they must have the same realization, but their method is different. Of course, the Mahayana uses this bodhicitta is the most important aspect of the 6 paramitas and so on. So it differs in methods, but that the realization must be the realization of emptiness must be the same. Well, that's Tsongkhapa. He has his many particular views on emptiness. It's not the same as the Nyingma and Kagyu schools. But then again, Rinpoche said finally that it's important to learn one system, not just pick parts of them, because then they might seem very contradictory. At least if you know one system that now we are learning Longchenpa system, then it's much more easy to compare it to other system and understand why they say what they are saying. Yes, last one, nirvana is peace. So this entails freedom from samsara. And the final peace, I'm just reading my notes here, you reach by 2 feet. So these feet are the selflessness and knowledge of phenomena. Yeah. So subtle is the knowledge of phenomena. So whereas in Mahayana, your method is altruism and bodhicitta. So this is what brings you beyond peace. Okay, that was my note. I don't know if I got the last thing. Anyone who got it differently? The last nirvana is peace.
I wanted to ask you about it because I had wisdom somewhere.
Yeah.
And wisdom and method. And under method, I had altruism based on bodhicitta.
Yeah.
But not under wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
I had some point realization, but it's all muddled up in my notes.
Yeah. Practical aspect. Yeah. Yeah, I don't have any more there either. That
I have a little bit more.
okay, good.
It's a method, it's altruism based on bodhicitta, and it's going beyond self-liberation zone. So that is
Going
that
beyond, oh yeah, beyond self-liberation. Is that what you've written?
Yeah, about bodhicitta.
Okay.
No, that's second.
So when he talks about nirvana is peace, freedom from samsara, the final peace you reach by 2 feet, is that then, was he then talking about Mahayana?
Yeah.
Okay, then
it was Mahayana.
Yeah, then it makes sense.
And that, yeah, and then we go to fully enlightenment.
Yeah, because then they go beyond peace, and that are actually in the higher schools they also criticize this resting in peace, that you have to go beyond that. You have to go further.
I can to read more because I have it. It was peace means free from the samsara. That's why it peace. When you look Mahayana perspective, that is not ultimate peace. That's why and then we come this to fits. So firstly describes that peace of Hinayana liberation. It's not fully.
Okay, so this is the Mahayana perspective. That makes sense. Perspective. So then this peace is not the final. Is not the
destination.
not the final destination. You actually go beyond peace by applying altruism and bodhicitta. Then you go beyond this personal liberation. And
the more end of the piece by 2 feet. So we should to end Hinayana piece by 2 feet.
You reach beyond Hinayana piece by 2 feet?
Yeah, we end of the piece by 2 feet. I write like this.
Yeah.
That's all.
Okay, I think that is all. Then we go on. Any other arms up? Okay. Yeah.
I have one question actually about I don't understand because Hinayana accept Tripitaka, but don't accept Prajna Pyramida. Well, it's Prajna Pyramida actually. So
because
I thought
it kind of refutes everything that Hinayana is concerned with. Rinpoche talked about it today. Where do I have it? It says that there are these 16 negations that that Rinpoche talked about. They say that there are no skandhas, there is no purity, no impurity, there is no path, no destination. So it kind of I think maybe from a Hinayana perspective, that might fall into their nihilism, or it's refuting, of course, from the perspective of emptiness. The Hinayana path is, I mean, it's still valid as a relative path, but from an ultimate perspective, which is the Prajna Paramita, it's kind of picking apart the Hinayana perspective.
Yeah, but I mean about where to input Prajna Paramita like basket. So I always thought that Prajna Paramita it's Abhidharma, no?
It's
I don't know.
well, it's not Vinaya. You can
Not
have
Vinaya.
Vinaya Sutra basket.
It's
But of course,
Abhidharma or not?
like we talked about this, there are different. There are also different pitakas. How much they put in the pitakas? Yeah, one is accepted by the Hinayana, and one is accepted by the Mahayana and Vajrayana. So we have different canons in the different Buddhist schools.
So Hinayana have
Hinayana, they don't,
Pitaka, but not like Vajrayana and Mahayana.
they
So
don't
it's
accept.
different Pitakas.
Yeah, they don't accept in their Sutra Pitaka, they don't accept. I think the Vinaya is probably the same for all, because that is so old. It's still the Sarvastivadin Vinaya that they use even within the Mahayana schools. But of course, the Hinayana, they don't accept the Mahayana Sutras or the Vajrayana Tantras.
So
they have
use just Vinaya Pitaka.
Huh?
They use just Vinaya Pitaka.
No, they have 3 Pitakas, but they don't have as many sutras. They have all the agamas, the early sutras, in their sutra basket, and not the tantras and the Mahayana sutras.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
They refute this coming also here in the text. They don't think the Mahayana is right. They thought it was invented by heretics and demons. So they don't accept it as the Buddha's words. So we have different, they have 3 Pitakas, but they can contain more or less of the sutras.
Thank you.
Okay. Alina, any more impossible questions?
Yeah. So now about the third seal, we heard that they agree that all phenomena are empty and selfless. And in the explanation, it was about the selflessness, I understood that. Yeah, and I mean emptiness in terms of innate.
That it's devoid of innate
imputed self.
And imputed.
So
yeah.
And I wonder, empty, how do they explain, or what do they agree to when they agree to all phenomena are empty? What more than empty of self do they agree to? Because the seal itself, it mentions both. It mentions empty and selfless. So I wonder what is left, or what. Do you understand my question?
I understand your question, and also how the question is how this imputed and innate selflessness can pertain to emptiness. Yeah, but I think it's just accepted that it does. That this is enough, and from a kind of ontological perspective, they also refute that that we experience anything that is whole. Like I said, like the idea with the table, that objects are, a table is empty of being a table, right? Even if it consists of
the third seal, they would say it's synonymous, like empty and selfless is like the same expression.
I think I have it right.
Yeah, I think they are different. I think because we also, divide between selflessness of persons and selflessness of phenomena. Right, so phenomena would be, our skandhas would be one kind of phenomena, and they would be empty of self, and whereas a table would be empty of being a table.
Okay, now I think I get it. Thank you.
Even if it would consist of some atoms, but they are not, that is not something that our mind can really perceive.
Yeah, thank you. Got it.
That was my explanation. I don't know if Rinpoche would agree, but okay. Can we end there? So learn the 4 seals by heart and study them, and it's very and then you always feel you have this stamp in your forehead. I'm a Buddhist. Okay. Okay, have a good evening.
Thank you, Ellen.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye.
Ellen.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.